The distress call came at 7:42 a.m. A weak, warbled voice crackled through the radio, barely audible beneath static and wind. Engine room, flooding, Balsa 24, going down. Then silence. No coordinates, no names, just a few broken words from the middle of the Pacific. By the time anyone reached the area where that call was believed to have come from, the ocean was empty. There was no ship, no survivors, no wreckage floating in a recognizable field. Just two lifeboats drifting without passengers, a scattering of oil drums, and silence. 33 men had been aboard the MV Balsa 24. Not one of them was ever found. To this day, the ship has never been recovered. The mystery of the Balsa 24 remains one of the most baffling and unsettling disappearances in maritime history. The MV Balsa 24 was built in 1953 in Denmark, originally christened as the Ellen Bakke. It had changed hands several times over the years, serving under different companies and flags before being acquired by Ecuador's Balsa line in the early 1970s. By the time of its final voyage, it had already logged over 2 decades at sea. She was 86.8 meters long, with a gross tonnage of 2,495 tons and powered by a diesel engine, standard for mid-sized freighters of the time. While aging, she was still considered seaworthy and had passed inspections prior to her last trip. On August 24, 1975, the Balsa 24 departed Callao, Peru, en route to Panama. She was carrying general cargo, nothing hazardous, nothing classified or particularly valuable. The crew numbered 33, all reportedly Ecuadorian nationals, including the captain and chief engineer. Among the manifest, food, machinery parts, textiles, and barrels of industrial lubricants. The journey should have taken several days along the coast of South America, and then through open Pacific waters up to the Isthmus of Panama. No issues were reported. The ship maintained regular contact with other vessels via radio as it passed northward. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Then, at dawn on September 5th, the Balsa 24 sent out its final message. The call was brief, just long enough to identify the vessel and describe engine room flooding. No Mayday protocol was completed, no location was relayed, and then nothing. The U.S. Coast Guard, which monitored maritime frequencies in the region, picked up the transmission and immediately initiated a response. Aircraft from bases in Panama and Ecuador were scrambled. Commercial vessels in the region were diverted to the general area from which the signal was believed to have originated. It didn't take long to find the lifeboats. One was drifting west of the Galapagos Islands. It was intact, but empty. Oars missing. The canvas shelter half deployed. The other was found capsized, waterlogged, and half submerged. Nearby, rescue crews located several oil drums, pieces of wooden paneling, and a single floating crate of canned goods. The life jackets recovered were unused. None bore bloodstains, damage, or signs of hasty donning. The most chilling detail was the absence of human remains. No crew, no bodies, no indication that anyone had made it out of the water or perished in it. An investigation was opened immediately by the Ecuadorian Maritime Authority with cooperation from the U.S. and Panamanian governments. In the days that followed, families of the 33 missing sailors gathered outside shipping offices in Guayaquil and Quito, desperate for news. Some clung to hope. Others braced for confirmation of death. But what none of them expected, what no one did, was that there would be nothing. No bodies, no debris field. No distress flares ever sighted, no final logs retrieved. The Balsa 24 had simply disappeared into the sea. Theories began to swirl. The most obvious explanation was catastrophic flooding. The initial transmission mentioned the engine room taking on water. Investigators speculated that a burst cooling pipe or hull breach could have flooded the engine compartment and disabled propulsion. Without power, the ship may have listed rapidly and sunk stern first, pulling down the communications array before a full distress signal could be issued. But that theory didn't explain the rest. The ship's location, based on signal triangulation, was in an area of relatively shallow continental shelf. The ocean floor there has been mapped and scanned repeatedly over the years, yet no wreckage has ever been found. Moreover, the Balsa 24 had 4 lifeboats and life rafts aboard, with capacity for more than the crew. If the men had time to launch even 2 of them, why were there no survivors? Why no flares? Why hadn't they been found in the following days? The presence of intact lifeboats suggested there had been at least an attempt to abandon ship. That pointed away from a sudden catastrophic event like an explosion. But then, where did the men go? One of the few tangible clues came a month later, when a message in a bottle washed ashore near Punta Arenas, Costa Rica. Inside was a hand-scrawled note. "We are adrift. We lost power. No food. Please find us. God help us." Signed with the initials RM. Investigators were able to identify at least one crew member from the Balsa 24 whose initials matched, Rafael Morales, a deckhand listed among the missing. The bottle was analyzed and confirmed to be consistent with supplies carried aboard the Balsa 24. The ink and paper matched mid-1970s Ecuadorian stock. The cork had been sealed with wax, possibly from a candle or emergency kit. The discovery of the message raised troubling possibilities. It implied that at least one lifeboat had made it off the ship with living crew aboard, and that they had drifted, possibly for days, before vanishing completely. Search planes scoured the surrounding ocean. Patrol vessels were dispatched up the Central American coast. Nothing was found. Later interviews with merchant captains sailing the same route in the days following the disappearance turned up little. One Panamanian crew claimed to have seen a flare one night far out to sea, but by the time they changed course, the sky was empty. By the end of 1975, the investigation had gone cold. The Ecuadorian government issued a formal declaration of death for all 33 crew members. The shipping company, Balsa Line, was quietly dissolved the following year, but not everyone accepted the official version. Some families believed the ship had been deliberately scuttled, possibly as part of an insurance fraud scheme. There were whispers that the cargo manifest didn't match the actual contents aboard. One rumor claimed the vessel had been smuggling contraband, possibly drugs or weapons, on behalf of a covert network operating between Colombia and Central America. Those theories were never substantiated. Others turned to more extreme explanations. A retired U.S. Navy radar operator, speaking under anonymity in the 1990s, claimed that the military had tracked an unidentified object descending rapidly over the Pacific on the very morning the Balsa 24 disappeared. It had no known propulsion, no transponder, and it vanished from radar just minutes after the Balsa's distress signal. The implication? That the ship encountered something unnatural. UFO theorists latched onto the story, drawing connections between other maritime disappearances, like the Cyclops, Carol A. Deering, and vessels lost in the so-called South Pacific Anomaly Zone. But again, no proof ever surfaced. There was no wreck, no black box, no final log. The sea had buried the evidence. To this day, no official cause has been determined. The Balsa 24 remains a ghost ship. Her last known coordinates are a question mark on old maps. Her crew, men with families, lives, birthdays, are now names on a weathered plaque in Guayaquil. Each year, on September 5th, surviving relatives still hold a candlelight vigil by the waterfront. They gather in silence, looking out at the black horizon where the waves roll in without end. Some weep, some pray. Others say nothing at all, because what can be said? How do you mourn a grave that doesn't exist? How do you explain a ship that simply vanished? The truth may never come to light, but in Ecuador, the The story of the Balsa 24 still lingers like a salt wind, present but invisible. And somewhere out in the Pacific, beneath miles of shifting water, perhaps the ship still lies waiting, or perhaps it was never meant to be found. Thank you for listening to The Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.